everyone. Let's get dangerous.
This is so cool.
I know.
It feels so right.
It's Jake Ciely.
Opening our minds to new ideas. Kill him!
Who is that guy?
Your mama.
You just made the list.
Oh, wait, you're serious? Let me laugh even harder.
It's all in fantasy. Things of the range.
Sure, we talk about it all the time.
Really?
No, burn.
Game on, you ducks! Yes, it is All in Fantasy, and yes, it is Jake Ciely, but no, it is not Chris Meany. It is another Jake because I'm so conceited that when I don't have Chris Meany on the show, I need another person named Jake. Like, we can't just do Jake and somebody else. No, it has to be Jake and Jake. So today's show is Jake and Jake, talking Week 12 waivers as we hit the home stretch. Is Jake Trowbridge, right? That is Trowbridge, right? I didn't say that wrong. Correctly?
It's Trowbridge, it's Trowbridge, it's Trollbridge. Sometimes it's Throwbridge. It's really whatever anybody says at this point.
Yeah, but if you were like, hey, this is my last name, what's the actual...
If they asked me like checking in at an airport, it would be Trowbridge.
Trowbridge. So I said it wrong. I actually said Trowbridge one time, and then I was like, wait, maybe because there's a W, it's Trowbridge, and then this is what happens. But if you're not following Jake Trowbridge, you should be, because we go way back to the point where I'll admit at the beginning I was like, who the hell is this dude? And you jumped into a chat, and the best way possible, if you want to get on my good side, I don't know if Jake remembers this, but he actually jumped into a chat defending banned kickers to Marcus Grant as one of the very first things ever on Twitter. Way back then. And you can't come closer to making yourself happy and a friend in my heart than to come for bank. So much so that there was somebody that was like, you know what, you should do something for Jake, which I thought was very kind of I was not going to jump in and be like, hey, yeah, do a parody of me, because that sounds conceited. But I even said that nobody can do my voice, and you tried, and you didn't nail the voice, but you definitely nailed the theme behind it. If anybody remembers that one out in the back, I don't know. Did you drop F-bombs on your videos anymore? Because that was an F-bomb video.
Was it really? I don't know.
Yes.
I've probably scaled that back quite a lot, as I've advanced in my age here and maturity level. I don't think I can ever do your voice. I just hope to capture your essence. That's all.
Thank you. If you don't know what is also going on, Jake does some of the best parodies. Musician, for everybody that's heard me, I'll do a stanza in something and make up my own thing. But Jake does full-on production, outfits, videos, the whole nine. What's your favorite one so far?
Ooh, that's a great question. Your shirt reminded me. I did do a Blink-182 parody. I didn't do that song. I didn't do Miss You, but I did an All the Small Things one. I enjoyed that.
That was one of my favorite. Yeah, my shirt, if anybody wants to look later on the YouTube title, it's not actually Miss You. It's actually, don't waste your time on me. You're already the voice that judge my head. That's actually what it is. Actually, you know what, Jake? Let's do it. How about, don't waste your start on me. The player on the bench will be better instead. There you go.
That works.
There you go.
I think we could use that for a hefty number of players this week too. So it's very versatile.
Or I'll only crap the bed. That's even better. I like that. Don't waste your start on me. I'm only going to crap the bed. There we go. We did this live, and maybe this will be a future rendition from Jake. But we aren't going to just talk parodies. Again, please give him a follow at Jake Trowbridge, with a W, by the way, over at MAB Fantasy Life. Real quick, tell everybody also what else you have going over at Fantasy Life besides just awesome videos.
A lot of the video stuff that I'm doing over there, that's my main focus. But I also do a TikTok live stream, help with start sits on Wednesday evenings, help with waivers on Mondays. So I'm fresh off of the waiver one last night. And then sporadically, just jumping in and helping out wherever need be. I try to be a utility knife over there,
Oh, it's very smart of you. It's because you'd always be finding a job somewhere, like coming on this podcast as a wonderful guest to replace Chris Meany. So let's talk waivers. But before we talk waivers, kind of some takeaways that could affect waivers. And right off the top, there are some big worries at this point in the season as we hit this fantasy playoff stretch coming up here. And one is a big one at the quarterback position. I actually included all three of these in my column over at The Athletic, which if you're listening to this, I'm assuming you're listening and following that. But It's Jayden Daniels, and I'm sure you've seen the stats by now that since he's been hurt, how much less he's actually running, almost 3 times less per game, and that's throwing out the game. Like I did that throwing out the game against the Steelers, which the Steelers treated him like Lamar Jackson. Everybody said that's what we're going to do. Shocker. So even throwing that out, he's running 3 times less per game. But if you include that, it's even worse. But it's obvious that the throws are not there either because you see some of them skipping to the wide receivers. If Jayden Daniels has been your quarterback because you've been like, oh, I don't need another quarterback till week 14. I'm good. Are you starting to think about a second quarterback right now until maybe you get past that bye with how he's playing?
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's all injury based or not. It is. I mean, the last 2 matchups, you go, all right, he's got to play Philly, he's got to play Pittsburgh. Like, we should have probably tempered expectations regardless. Then you factor in the injury. But it's not as if it's going to be immediate top tier production the next couple of weeks against Dallas and Tennessee either. Is the other thing that's taking a hit besides his rushing is just his air yards, his intended air yards, not there. It's not the Jayden Daniels that we've seen all along. So I think there's some other interesting QB options out there that I'd rather explore at this point. Like if Bo Nix is out there for the next couple of weeks, would I rather start him over Jayden Daniels? It becomes a big discussion at least. They'll land on that side for sure, but it's a consideration.
All right, well then let's talk running back, and I'm kind of with you on that, and I want to save the obvious potential quarterback that you might be able to turn to, but we're going to talk about good in a second here. But Aaron Jones, I got a lot of people asking, and they're like, "Man, do I just keep plugging away with Aaron Jones?" And I mean, how do you not when you have a lead running back? Like it's Aaron Jones, but if anybody hasn't noticed, and I know the people who have Aaron Jones have since week 8, RB 26 overall. RB 31 in fantasy points per game. And that's coming with 21, 25, 19, and 16 touches. 16 was the tough matchup last week. But all that being said is, I kind of, it's one of these things, Jake, where I've said before, like the old Lamar Miller, and I'm not calling him Lamar Miller, but it's like a lot of times fantasy players and fans are like, give him more touches, give him more touches, give him more touches. Look how good he is. And then as we saw with Lamar Miller, are we seeing this with Aaron Jones? Is like maybe the Packers knew what they were doing and limiting him to 15, 16 touches a game. And this 20-touch Aaron Jones just isn't good because he's also had 3.1 and 3 yards per carry against good matchups. And so is that something you're thinking of? Because I give him 3 out of 5 ducks. Like I'm worried about Aaron Jones unless they peel back and start to give Akers even more of a share.
Well, and there's good news on that horizon, though, because at least Akers has been getting double-digit touches the last couple of weeks. So maybe there's something to that. Maybe they will be pivoting towards that, which would be helpful for him. First of all, I do want to say Aaron Jones, still number 1 in my heart, where it counts. But last year's Packers, towards the playoff stretch at least, the Packers got his touches ramped up, and it was fine. It was good for us in that very condensed allotment of games. I think it was like maybe a handful towards the end. That was good. But with the Vikings doing this consistently for an entire season, as a 30-year-old guy, that's maybe not the best path forward. So I don't know if they'll scale it back completely, but it's still hard. I can't sit him. I won't sit him because there's still a chance. Like last week, he's a yard shy of a touchdown, and we're not as worried, if he just gets in there.
Well, then let me throw it kind of this way. If you're looking at a trade deadline situation, actually, is he, in this player, is he now near and dear to your heart, Josh Jacobs being on this team? Like, Josh Jacobs is not finding the end zone. If you could flip Aaron Jones for Josh Jacobs, would you do that right now if you could? Obviously, I'm just kind of talking like contextually here.
Yeah, I think because of durability concerns with Aaron Jones, I would, just because of where we are in the season at this point. Beginning of the year, great, whatever, but we got to make all these count, and the risk of injury or slowing down for Aaron Jones is too real.
All right, then let me give you 2 more toss-ups. Would you flip Aaron Jones for J.K. Dobbins with the worry that all this Gus Bus work and yeah, like I see the thought process going on in your head right now.
I didn't think I'd have to think about this, and I don't want to think about this. I don't think I would, though. I think Dobbins is a bridge too far for me with that. I think I would stick with Aaron Jones.
All right, then last one. We have the return. We were talking waivers kind of encapsulated here. Is, interestingly, there is a rookie running back that everybody was panicking about for the beginning of the season of like, oh, the times it's like it's gonna time like we're gonna run out of time. It's I don't know what to do. Get rid of him, sell him away. And if you did, you're hating yourself for selling away Chuba Hubbard, despite the fact that Jonathon Brooks is going to make his debut. He's going to make his debut. But Jonathon Brooks didn't get that giant contract that we've already been talking about with Hubbard, and it's been so good for Hubbard. Would you take the risk of Hubbard, like maybe seeding? Like, I kind of almost, you can actually pull that question into this of like what your concern of Hubbard of like, I think he's probably going to stay around 60%, maybe even 65%. But I know there's the worry that like, what if it becomes 50-50? What if it becomes worse version of J.K. Dobbins? So all that being said, would you feel better about Aaron Jones and his workload despite it not being very good, or Chuba Hubbard, who's been better, but with the risk of Brooks coming back? That's a very, very, very long-winded question.
That's a lot to consider. And also the other thing to consider with the contract, look at the team itself. It's the Panthers. Are they playoff bound? I would say probably not. So I think they have to look at, we just gave this guy a massive extension. We have this rookie that we have to test out and see what we at least have in him. So is it guaranteed that he sees 60, 65%? No. So there is a risk there. I hope he does because he has been so good. I think they both have equal concerns. I'm going to play both sides so that I come out on top. But I think I would stick with Aaron Jones strictly because I don't see Cam Akers vulturing quite as much work as I would Jonathon Brooks.
All right, that's fair. So let's kind of, before we do the power-ups, let me go to waiver running backs because it's thin. It's been thin for a while. And my top running backs are Brooks because he fell under 60%, Gus Edwards, Roschon Johnson, Jerome Ford, and then we get into the Jaylen Warren, Trey Benson, Charbonnet, Justice Hill. He's like, basically, are you okay with those top four? Because what I try to say at this point is, no, maybe if I'm doing rest of season ranks, this isn't my order, but I try to, because we're in week 12. Do I want Braylon Allen on my bench? Sure, but we know that like I'm shooting for the upside that something happens to Breece Hall. He's there because of that. Do I want Mostert? No, because Mostert, if something happens, sure, he'll be part of a timeshare and possibly valuable, but it's more ceiling is what I'm getting at. It's like ceiling here. So Gus Edwards is playable, but of course, if Dobbins gets hurt, he's also potentially top 20. So Brooks, Edwards, Roschon, Ford, are you kind of okay with that thought process? Or do you think one of those kind of falls into the Mostert argument, like maybe a Jerome Ford, where, you know what, even if Chubb were to get hurt, I'm still not that excited?
I don't know if it's the exact same handcuff type argument, but Edwards isn't somebody I'm going out of my way to obtain still, just because I don't know how much they're going to be able to run in the short term against the schedule that they have coming up. It's kind of rough against those run defenses. KC's on the horizon, Baltimore, and he's just not involved as a pass catcher at all. So Gus is the one that sticks out to me of like, I guess, I'll do it because it is so thin. Roschon's very interesting to me. I like him, kind of touchdown or bust, but you need that at this stage in the season. Jaylen Wright is another guy I've been considering. I'd rather have Jaylen Wright, honestly, than Mostert, or even talking about some of the other handcuffs like Braylon Allen. Because with the season maybe on the verge of collapse here for Miami, like you got a lot of banged up running backs there. Maybe just give it to the dude who has a pristine, slate as of right now.
Man, why'd you have to put that into existence for all the HN teams? Like all the HN teams, just all they wanted was like, hey, just give them bell cow work. Could you imagine? And we actually got it. Like everybody's like, oh, Mostert's still going to be involved, and like it actually happened. And now you're trying to take it away from him at the worst time possible.
I don't want to take it away from him. I just want them to be ready. That's all.
Okay. That's fair. And I actually do have Jaylen Wright. I do have him actually in front of Marshawn Lloyd, who's returning, by the way, coming back from an appendectomy already, in front of Al. And then both of them are in front of Algier, Davis, and Allen. But other weeks, Algier, Davis, and Allen would have been higher, except on bye. So they flip. Well, not Davis, but yeah. Wait, is Davis on? Bills are on a bye too, right? I think so. Yeah, all three of them on our bye. That's why they're so low there, because they don't play this week, so nothing could happen to the lead option. So that's why they'd be further up. So let's come back and talk the worst of the worst potentially for all these worries, because you just talked Dolphins, which means we need to talk Jaylen Waddle. So I think there's a lot of things going on with Waddle, and this is just me. And maybe you come from a different area than I do on this, but I don't think it's only injury. Like, I do think this is potentially part of it, because you watch Waddle, and it feels like that real explosiveness that we know Waddle has is kind of missing. And the history of Jaylen Waddle when not being 100%, he doesn't, like, you basically don't ever start him if he's not 100%. And I mean 100%. Jaylen Waddle, 93%, you might as well just not start. I don't know what it is about him. But the other aspect of it is I really wanted to watch closer for this Dolphins game. And this doesn't feel like last year's Dolphins. Like, you know, where it's just like, oh my God, there's 5 people, 6 people, 7 people. They're just going to run past us. There's a few now, because I feel like Mostert's not what he was. Waddle's banged up. But the other part of it too is like, it's like defenses said, you know what? Okay, we know your trick, so we're just going to sit back, force you to stay in front of us, and you're just going to play this little short dink and dunk game, and nobody's going to run past us. And of course, it doesn't work 100%, but it feels like the book, I put that in quotes if you didn't see it on the YouTube page, but the book is out on how to limit McDaniel's offense, and I feel like the person that's getting the most victimized by it is Waddle.
Yeah, and I was really hopeful that Coach would come out and go, I got to fix some stuff from last year, because in the second half of last year, we saw a similar type of deal happen with him. Like, he just got figured out, and it just got expedited this year. So with Waddle, yeah, the injury, of course, plays into it. He's kind of an anti-Julio Jones guy, where he's going to play through it, but what's that going to do? And also, you can't at this stage in the season look at somebody who has had one double-digit fantasy performance in full PPR and be like, got to get him into my lineup. He's essentially Sterling Shepard at this point. You know, like, great, you can use him if you have to, but otherwise I'm staying clear because of the consolidation. So there's my bone to the HN peeps out there. It's consolidated into HN. So even if Jalen Wright gets involved, we're still going to see a heavy dose of him.
All right, well then let's turn this to wide receivers. I'm going to keep pushing apparently power-ups back further into the show as we kind of like weave through this. But the Waddle comes into like so let me ask you this question first, because this is without context. And of course it's going to sound potentially like hot takey if without context, but I assume you're saying the same thing I am, and that Waddle is potentially droppable, right?
Yep.
Like that. Okay, so now let's kind of take the context in, and let's see how far these are the only wide receivers. What wide receiver finally got thin? It took all year, but we're finally to the point where it's starting to be like, wow, there are options which might not even make it into my 4th wide receiver spot. But first off the top, again, because I'm chasing upside, the first one is Christian Watson. I hate dealing with, let me make this clear, I hate dealing with the Packers wide receivers. I said this from day one this season. People tried to victory lap the Jayden Reed thing. I'm like, where are you now, crickets? Like, and he's still the best, but it's been Dobbs at times. It's been Wicks at times. It's been Watson at times. And the thing is more recently, was that Watson not only pulled in front of Wicks, as you well know. By the way, Jake is Wisconsin. That's why he was saying that Aaron Jones is still close to his heart. But he pulled in front of Wicks. But this last week, it wasn't just Wicks. He pulled in front to what the preseason concern of Jayden Reed was. Is that Jayden Reed, we remember the reports, is like, Jayden Reed's only on the field in 3 wide receiver sets. Jayden Reed is only playing the slot. Jayden Reed's going to be destroyed this year because he's never on the field. That kind of happened because Reed became the 3 this week, and he wasn't like never on the field. He was just on the field 5 or 6 routes fewer than Dobbs and Watson. Watson actually tied for Kraft in the lead in routes. And that's what I'm saying is like, I don't want to chase the Packers, but if I'm chasing upside at this point, Waddle's hitting the waivers if Christian Watson's sitting out there. Do you agree with that?
Watson is far and away a better option to plug into your lineup than Waddle. Because, again, you know what you're getting with Waddle. The hopes of a big blow-up game just don't seem to be there at all. With Watson, yeah, okay, maybe he will goose you, but I'd rather take that risk, especially in your flex. I will say, I went through and looked at who the yardage leader is per game for the Packers, because as an avid Packer fan, like I had a sense of this, but I wanted to make sure I was right. It goes Reed, Dobbs, Watson, Reed, Kraft, Watson, Dobbs, Kraft, Reed, Watson. It is going to be that frustrating the rest of the season. But if you land on it at the right time, then, you know, you win your matchup. And that's more than can be said for Waddle.
So if I'm following that tracking, this is kind of like a math problem. So this week it's Reed, is what you're telling me? This is Reed, and then
I think that's too soon. It might be a Dobbs week. It looks like
It might be a
Dobbs
Dobbs or Kraft, and then it's Reed, and then we're coming like, okay, let's see if we could get that like every. I thought it was every third week at first, but then that last one it moved it down to that extra week to throw it in there. Maybe it's to make up for the bye. I don't know. And now you got me all confused there. Number 2, I'd still drop Waddle for. Let's see how far I can get you to agree with me. I'm dropping him. I've also, to be fair, had this person in my column since the preseason. Like, I'm tired of typing his damn name into the column. But Quentin Johnston continues to be in the column. And I understand there was that part where he was hurt, so he missed time. But for all the people that are excited about some names that we might get to later, he's just Christian Watson on the Chargers. But here's what I know is that he might have more inconsistency than Watson, maybe, but at least I know every single week he's in a top 2 role. We can't say that about Watson. So I actually think this is very close, and I would drop Waddle for Quentin Johnston's too.
1000%. I wouldn't give it a second thought. We know he can score touchdowns. That's great. I'll take that. And again, I think that the Chargers should be throwing more down the stretch based on their schedule. So like, yeah, historically he hasn't seen a ton of targets, and that's frustrating, but that should correct a little bit, I think.
All right, number 3, we might be getting to the territory of, I don't know if I agree with you, Jake, but let's find out. As in, Jake doesn't agree with me, Jake. Sure. Number 3, Jalen McMillan, and this is why. Like, Jalen McMillan and Juwan Jennings were frustrating at the same time, but one of them has obviously come around, is they both got hurt when everybody went to go pick them up with the Chris Godwin and Brandon Ayuk injury at the same time. I mean, huge fab spending, 60, 70%. People were going crazy. Deservedly so. The appeal was McMillan in the Chris Godwin role, and I still believe that's what he can do. I actually, coming from college, I said, the dude loves and knows how to find space and just get open and work for his quarterback. He got hurt, really hasn't played. If anybody didn't see that last game and they see the 0, understand he actually didn't even run a route. Like, he was active, and I put that in quotes because I don't know if I would call that active. I don't know if he was like break glass in case of emergency. But anyway, everybody's like, well, Mike Evans is coming back. I actually like that for him, Jake, because I don't like... There's a lot of wide receivers. I always bring up Michael Wilson for the Cardinals. It's like anytime they're asked to be the one, they kind of fall apart. Khalil Shakir for the Bills, they're asked to be the one. And that's because they're really good talents, but they're not number 1 talents. And that's okay. I think McMillan's actually in a really good spot with Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield. Would you drop Waddle for McMillan? Because I would, but I think a lot of people wouldn't do that one.
I would. Again, there is upside potential there. At this stage in the game, it is too late in the season to go, give me my 8 points, wide receiver. Like, we need to get beyond that. We need somebody with more potential. I'm so glad you brought up Mike Evans' return because I agree with you. He needs somebody to give him the space out there in the field to do his work. So Mike Evans back, I think, is a great thing for him. I think he starts seeding a little bit, like the stuff that's been Cade Otton for the last few weeks. I think some of that just starts to shift over a little bit towards McMillan. So I'm fine with that.
All right, this next 2, I'm actually skipping 5 because 4 and 6, I could see it, but I could also see not. Like this now, I'm already hesitating. Jaylen Waddle for the Brownies, Judy and Elijah Moore. Would you do both? Neither?
Both.
One? Both. Yeah.
Both.
I'm okay with it. Like,
this version of the Browns is basically the 2018 Rams. It's like, remember, you could start Cooks, you could start Robert Woods, even young Cooper Kupp for the most part, like, and feel pretty good about it as long as, big caveat, as long as Jameis Winston remains the quarterback in Cleveland. I'm fine plugging any of those 3 into my lineup.
Wow. All right, then let's ask number 5. And I don't have a problem with it. It's like the comparison I made is that this is last year's Seahawks and the fact that Judy is Lockett and Moore is JSN. So Moore has the higher ceiling, but Judy's going to be the more consistent of the 2.
Interesting.
Is that
but
fair?
again, and that's fair. Consistency, though, I think is overrated again at this stage of the game. So I'm fine with it.
Yeah, everybody keeps asking about Demario Douglas. Oh, sorry, I do it on this podcast. I have to do it the right way. Demario Douglas is, he's not even in the waiver column. Why? And then so finally this week, people kept asking. I put him at 11 behind Alec Pierce because I'm like, that's why. Like, you want your 7 points? Cool. I don't. See, this is why we from day one, in on kickers, in on upside. It's just, maybe I head to Wisconsin. We can do a video together. That'd be good.
There we go.
Do this, make it
Jake
happen.
Squared video production.
I actually got called J squared in high school because for everybody out there that might not, I'm about to peek behind the curtain here. Jake is not my legal name. My legal name I know. Like this is, you know what? Like you come on this podcast and you get something else nobody else has ever gotten. My legal name is actually John. I'm the third, but my dad always was. So there's two things. My dad wanted to keep the family name going because my middle name is my great uncle who died in the Battle of Normandy. So that's why. But he also always wanted a son named Jake. So to differentiate me, I've basically been Jake from day one. Like John doesn't exist. Jake does. Gotcha. But legally, so when people find that out in high school, they started calling me J squared because of John and Jake. Is so funny that you said that.
Beautiful. At least you didn't get the John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt.
Oh, no.
I dealt with that because I had a best friend named John in grade school, and we'd always sit by each other. And so they'd sing it at us, and they sure thought it was funny.
I feel bad for that third kid named Jingleheimer.
Yeah, yeah, he had a rough go. It was never going to pan out for him.
All right. Anyway, back to this. Number 5, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who I think is just Quentin Johnston light, which in that case, like I've played him 2 weeks in a row, which I know the third week is probably going to bite me in the butt. I've played him in flex leagues 2 weeks in a row. So a third game asking from MVS. But here's my argument from day one when I did start him 2 weeks ago, Jake. Is I said, look, what does Derek Carr do? He throws the ball 2, 3, 4 times downfield. Rashid Shaheed was the one. He's not there anymore. He's still going to do it. So who's going to be the one that he does it with is Valdez-Scantling. I know you could get a 0, like a big fat 0. But we did this last year with Gabe Davis until we finally had so many zeros we stopped. But I think MVS is in that wide receiver 4 where, okay, you know what? I can get a 0, but I can also get 2 weeks in a row where potentially help me win my game.
Yeah, it's Marquez Valdez Shaheed. It is. He's just inserted, or Carr has tried his best at least to insert MVS into that role and be like, oh man, I'm gonna get you at least a few times. There's nothing on the horizon that says, obviously, yes, he could goose you at some point, just like Shaheed could. But again, when you look at what the upside play is there, fine. He's gonna get me a 0 at some point. Fine. I'm fine with the inevitable of it. As opposed to Pop Douglas, as opposed to Jaylen Waddle, as opposed to these guys where it's like, you know what you're getting, and it's not going to be good, so you might as well risk it.
You might as well. All right, 2 more wide receivers, and then we're going to get the power-ups and get you out of here. I don't want to take too much of your time, but a pair of teammates, and that's why. Let's see how far we're going to go with this. This might be the bridge too far. Jaylen Waddle dropped for Leggett and the returning Thielen. I say that because Leggett's been in there, another one, since preseason. He's been in there. Obviously a stash to start the year, and even more so since. The only reason Leggett has a little bit of a concern is because Thielen is returning, and this is Bryce Young at quarterback. So Waddle versus Leggett and Thielen, are you doing it?
I'm not doing it for Thielen, for sure. I can't.
But you are for Leggett.
I think I'm considering, because it's the same theory, at least for me, as what's going to happen with Chuba Hubbard and Jonathon Brooks. So if this team, obviously out of playoff contention, like, well, do we need to feature 34-year-old Adam Thielen a bunch more? I don't think we do. I know that's assuming rational coaching. That's not always a great thing to do. But in my head, that's how I can justify Leggett's upside, but not for Thielen.
You don't think they evaluate Thielen for the future? See if they,
really know what you
not
have.
Sure what he would break. Yeah, we're not sure what they have in him. They're like, all right, let's do power-ups and then get out of here. There are only 2, but the big one is a big one. It's the quarterback, and it is the return of Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson, though, I gave mushrooms like Mario. I gave him 3 out of 5. So I prefaced this with somebody coming from, I didn't think this was a bad move. Like, it seemed like you saw it, Jake. Everybody was just like, this is the stupidest move in history. His career is over. Why would you do this? Blah, blah, blah. Like, you're not getting anything out of this. And I'm like, why can't it just be like, hey, maybe we need to get his head straight? Because Chris Meany was the one that actually sent me down this path, because he brought up the fact that last year and this year, he's like, what's interesting is that Anthony Richardson's never hit the bench and not known it's his job. And I said, you know what? That might be what the issue is. He's still only 22. Like, maybe the issue is what I always bring up as Marquise Lee way back in the day when he came into the NFL, is that he was so good in college that he ran lazy routes, bad technique, but he got away with it in college. And it took him years to finally figure that out. Unfortunately, he had his best season, then tore the ACL, then the shoulder injury, and his career was over. But I was like, maybe that's what Richardson needs. He just needs to, hey, get it in your head. Like, you need to play better, period. Learn from Joe Flacco, who used to be a good pocket passer. It wasn't so much in his 2 games. But I say all that to say, I'm only still giving him 3 and not full 5 out of 5 on the power up, because watching that game, yes, it looked better. Yes, it was the best. It was the best game of his career. But there were still the issues we saw. Like, some of those throws, you're lucky Josh Downs made that catch. Like old school, earlier this year, Daniel Jones, Malik Neighbors. So to come full circle, Anthony Richardson or a hurt or whatever is going on with Jayden Daniels, if you had to play one for like the next 2 weeks, would it be Richardson or would it be Dan? Like, are we even having that conversation? Is that a stupid question? You can even say that, Jake. Like, I'm not, that's a bridge too far. You're going too far with this. Or is this something we should be talking about?
It's not a stupid question because, again, we're at the stage we need to look for maximum upside from our quarterbacks. And obviously Richardson proved that he had it. My concern with him, though, about just going, all right, are we chasing the points and running away from the guy who we know can still get points in Jayden Daniels? Pete Overzet had this great line in the Fantasy Life newsletter. It was actually about Taysom Hill, but I think it applies to this too, where it's like making him a must start now is like putting money into a slot machine that just paid out. And it's like, oh, maybe the odds of Anthony Richardson doubling up, you know, coming off of a obviously balling out situation against the Jets, who I still think are kind of like a fake tough defense. So that's my concern also, is like, oh, he did it against the Jets. Is he going to do it against Detroit this upcoming week? I feel much less secure about that. I don't think it's off the table. I would still go with Jayden Daniels.
Okay, and let me see if I can give you like a toss-up. How about like a rankings toss-up for this week? Since you are the Jake of all trades, like myself, and you got this. So let's say Anthony Richardson, or I'm trying to find, this I'm going to tug at your heartstrings right out of the gate. Jordan Love against the 49ers with all his interceptions of this season. Would you go? But hey, you have to start one this week. Would you go Jordan Love or Anthony Richardson?
I hate this. I hate that you're making me do this. A week before Thanksgiving. How rude. I just, knowing the history of 49ers
It'll be my early
defenses.
birthday presents. I have Black Friday birthday this year.
Oh, there you go. Well,
yeah.
Happy early birthday to you. And again, how rude. I do think that the 49ers defense has always had the Packers number. I don't think that necessarily changes. I do think that there's more upside with Richardson.
Okay. How about one more? I'll give you one more toss-up. For a while there last night, it was kind of shaky for CJ Stroud. And it was like, hey, Nico Collins is back. Everything's going to be fixed. And it was fixed-ish. But it was also the Cowboys defense, which shouldn't be causing that many issues. The Tennessee Titans defense is one that continually gets overlooked as problematic. They're not like, oh my God, run for the hills, don't start anybody against them. But they're problematic, I think, is the best term to use for them. Would you go CJ Stroud or the upside of Richardson this week?
I would go Richardson. Because Tennessee, unless you are an absolute dynamo quarterback, if you're Lamar Jackson, great. Like, start him against Tennessee, absolutely. I think this is enough of a question mark with him. There's no rushing upside for CJ Stroud. Give me that at least with Anthony Richardson. You know that Richardson's going to be probably trailing from behind a decent amount against Detroit. So garbage time. Yeah, give me Rich.
Give me Richardson. I love this. See, I love the tough questions for Jake. Before you get a tough question for you, how's your process with coming up with the videos? Like, is it a song and then you're like, I can put lyrics to that and mimic it? Or does it go the other way where you're like, you know what? I have some kind of lyrics that I think, let's see what it fits. Like, what's Jake's process of video making over here?
Wow. Now it's really the tough questions. My process is I think of dumb stuff all day, almost every day. And then sometimes I go, oh, I want to do that dumb thing with a voice. And then I try out a voice to see if I can do it. And I'm like, oh, I can do the voice. Now I merge those two things together, and then it just spirals out of control from there. So not much of a process, truly.
Actually, the voice, it's a tough one to do, but you have a tight end I need. That was a really good one from the Toy Story one. And the dude, for everybody out there, the dude wore the Toy Story outfit. It's just like,
I went full Woody, man. You got it.
Oh, phrasing, my friend. That's what was just a good one to get out of here on. Follow Jake Trowbridge at Jake Trowbridge and over at Fantasy Life, where he does waivers, rankings, videos, TikTok, a lot of fun, everything you need. Hopefully you enjoyed that, because there's no better way to get out of here on that show than Jake going full Woody.